will officially call the meeting to order. And if nothing else, Zoom is recording the meeting for us, but I don't know how well the audio in the recording will come through since it's only picking up in my microphone, so it's probably not worthwhile. But we did advertise the meeting on Zoom, so
Right.
it's there in
That's
case
what I was
anybody
worried
wants
about,
to
yeah.
connect. So call the meeting to order. Our first agenda item is the Trails Committee. So Shannon edited a copy of the draft Trails Committee charge, and it's probably.
Is it in the email?
Yeah,
It is.
I mean,
yeah.
it's pretty, I can't remember. when we last met, like where we left it. I know that I said some things or whatever, so it's good. I mean, it's got a lot in it.
Do you want me to just,
It's pretty specific.
just general, what I changed?
I've
I
got it
changed the
pulled up.
terms to stagger them to 3 years. I don't know if you like the wording on that. Feel free to change it.
Oh, that's good wording. That's the way things are always supposed to be done.
Mhm.
So you could say, well, it goes without saying, but it doesn't hurt to spell it out, and sometimes it helps.
Mhm. And then I took out references to the Conservation Commission, like that we would be reporting to them or, things like that. Let's see, I think that was, I took out anything related to maintenance of trails because we're
Right.
not doing that since other agencies are already doing that. And
That was my only thing, just in the first line. It was because it did say maintaining the trail system,
in the first line,
but
okay.
maybe it means like, maybe you meant like maintaining.
Developing, enhancing and maintaining.
But do you mean like maintaining a trail system in like the whole?
Committing to?
Sure,
not-
we could change the
I
wording.
think it might be
Yeah.
committing to, because
Okay.
you don't want to, you're not saying I'm maintaining, like I'm
No,
physically.
it's oversight the care of,
Okay,
we don't have responsibility to maintain it,
maintain
but
it,
we
yeah.
still should have an
Okay.
overview of what's being done.
okay,
Or maybe oversight of an oversight of a trail system. I would just take the word
Yeah,
maintaining out.
okay.
Just
That was it for me. The rest of it.
so what's going to happen with this is that we, once we're comfortable with the way we think a Trails Committee should look, we'll send this over to the Select Board, and the Select Board will have an opportunity to review, make any changes they would like to see changed in this. And then ultimately, we're hoping the Select Board will adopt the Trails Committee charge and will then proceed to recruit people for the committee.
Is the timing work with, because it says July 1st, so is that, does that work for the select board?
Yeah, because we do all the appointments at the end of
Okay,
in June.
perfect.
Yeah.
And if you create a new committee in the middle of the year, then you would probably make appointments as soon as people have volunteered, but then it would go into the regular cycle.
I'm just reading it on my.
Yeah, do.
phone.
That's why I think, yeah, go ahead and read it. I thought it, I mean,
Yeah, and you
Can
can, if you want to see the edits, in Word, you know how to do that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So who's responsible for the trail signage?
it would I mean, I think it even is in here that it's whatever entity, because some of them would be land trust, some would be conservation, and then if we were to come up with, or not we, maybe I hope not to be on that
Stop
committee.
saying we.
I know, the trails committee that I plan not to, hopefully not to be on.
Even though we're on the trails together all the
I
time.
know. But the trails committee, if they were to create a trail or, do some little, like it indicates here, if they're connecting a couple or something, maybe that would be a separate signage. It would just be Town of Grafton Trails. But I think it'll depend a little bit.
Yeah.
And right now the signs are very, depends on, which trail you're on too.
Does it say how many members, Shannon?
I think so, yeah.
I'm trying to,
Or no, I think you left that up
I
to
don't
the,
think It says, I see the term.
I think you left it up to the select board, if I remember.
oh, yeah,
I read
it does
yeah.
say that's a lot, yeah.
Right, number of
they-
members.
Which actually would be bad to just come up with a number because
Yeah, we could make a
I
recommendation,
think so, yeah.
and
Okay,
then
Direct it.
And then
Yeah.
Anne Marie, your board can always fix it if you don't like it. Right,
Is
it's
it
been my
5?
general experience that, the select board would like to have as complete a proposal as possible, so that
Right,
it's, they don't, so, we're not asking the select board to figure this all out. We're saying, here's the way we think it should be. And,
So just there, the committee shall consist of Grafton residents, non-even number or five, just call
with the
it five.
number, with 5 members.
Consist of 5 Grafton residents. Yeah.
Okay. And are we specifying that it has to be like, there has to be a representative from this, or just?
I think the less complicated.
Yeah.
The more opportunity people have to join.
yeah,
And do we have to speak about posting or is that all?
That's
part
in
of-
here too, the
Okay.
minutes, that it indicated in here that we're gonna, that the Trails Committee will submit minutes and agendas as.
No, I mean, post
Oh.
the role.
So what will happen is like this will,
It's like these seats.
Dave was saying is that this will come to select board, they say yes. And then the clerk posts it on the website and the blurb goes out everywhere. This is this new committee.
Mhm.
People who want to join, they submit their things into either town administrator and or clerk. Then the people who are interested come to select board and they get appointed. So we'd be out of that like altogether. So once the Trails Committee is signed, sealed, delivered, then it's like kind of goes through everyone else.
this committee's job is to try to make a Trails Committee happen, but
Mm.
we have no further relationship with the Trails Committee just becomes another committee that, we think the town, it meets a need that is currently unfulfilled.
Got it.
But,
Okay.
Yeah,
So the
that's,
5-member
yeah,
thing. is good.
that's,
Get
yeah,
that in there.
right. So we're just following up on the open space and recreation plan, which said we should have a Trails Committee. So our job is to sort of oversee the implementation of that OSRP action plan.
Mhm. Then off it
But yeah,
goes.
we're not, we don't want to keep our fingers and everything. We're sort of, sitting over it. We'd like to get other people to do all the work.
And I think the Trails Committee having not members of, because you figure Conservation Commission, I should say, already is embedded in this, right? With their trails and they're out there. Planning Board, same, Land Trust. So this will just be a total, I don't think we need any people from the.
No, the Trails
administration
Committee
here
will
per
be
se.
working with these other.
Yeah,
committees.
exactly, for sure, for sure.
And it may be that somebody from the Land Trust will want to be on the
Of
Trails
course.
Committee.
Yep.
Maybe somebody from Conservation will want to be on the
Right.
Trails Committee. Maybe Conservation will want to make sure that one of their members is on the
Mm.
committee, and that's fine.
Right. Yeah, like that would be ideal, but I think it's harder, well, as we've even seen just with getting a conservation rep to
Yeah.
this,
Yeah, we had the committee that developed the open space and recreation plan. When the committee started out, we had Scott Conway from Conservation was not only on the committee, but he was chairing the committee. And then he bailed, he took off, he left town.
Yeah.
And we were left with, and Conservation never did, send someone new to that committee.
Right.
And everybody else kind of fell off that committee.
Yeah, having a lot
I
of
don't need to
turnover.
rehash that, but yeah.
Turnover, that's for
That,
sure.
that committee didn't work as well as committees should work, but
So
that's in the past.
can we, if Shannon were to just make those little edits,
Mhm.
can we circulate that via email and give it the go ahead, or we would ideally meet again and vote on it or something?
If we're comfortable knowing what the edits are going to be,
Yeah,
we can vote to approve that and forward it to the select board,
okay.
maybe subject to review by one of us to,
Mhm.
to
At least
make sure that the actual
I would
wording
share
is
my
what we
review.
agreed to.
I think,
Yep.
I would like to move it forward to the
Mm.
select board.
Okay,
So.
Yeah, and the changes we've talked
Motion
about are
to,
pretty minimal.
Forward the draft
Or approve the,
for approval to the select board.
With the stated changes during tonight's meeting
Right.
to the select board.
second.
Moved and seconded. Is any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. All those, and I don't have to call for a roll call vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good. Clear that motion carried unanimously.
So should I reach out to Colleen to get this on an agenda? Because I can already tell you, I bet that it will be January,
It could very well be.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys don't have too many meetings in December.
right? So.
End of
should
the
I-
year is a tough year to get anything done.
so
A
should I
tough
go
time to get
ahead and
anything done.
email?
But
her to
yeah.
Get it on the agenda, because I don't think it, like, I think it'll give us, you'll
Yeah.
still have plenty of time to do the edit and get it all set.
Oh, yeah, I
Yep.
could do this just tomorrow
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
Who
But
wants
yeah.
to check it? Do you want to check it, Dave? Should I forward it to you or?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
a neutral
Yeah,
party.
okay.
Meaning to
Sure.
send it to Emery, who's on the select board. seems a little-
That's true.
I mean, it's that's just,
I'll make darn sure it goes.
that's
No, I
just,
won't.
right, that's just a matter of having another pair of eyes to
For
make
sure.
sure that
No, no, no.
Yeah.
what
Your
we're
eyes are
gonna
better
send the
than mine.
board is what we all agreed to tonight.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, and then reach out to Colleen and
Okay.
Amber, or one or both of Colleen and Amber to make sure that it.
Yep.
You know, it's
So we'll get on.
on,
probably
in the
early
pipeline to
January.
get on the
Yeah.
select board's agenda whenever.
Yep, okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
And we've been for so long without a trails committee, another month isn't gonna hurt.
Yeah.
True.
It's
I
just better.
probably, I may have mentioned this before, but 20 or so years ago, we had a trails committee.
Mm,
It didn't seem to last very long. I don't know. I wasn't connected with it in any way. So all I know is I see it in the old town reports. That
Hmm.
There was a trails committee once upon a time.
I bet Roger Holman was on it.
Dave, do we need to approve the minutes?
That's the third item.
Oh,
on
I
the
didn't see
agenda.
that. That's right.
Yes,
I'm-
we've
I'm
got.
getting ahead of Myself.
But we
You're
were-
ready to make the motion to
Somebody's
adjourn, right? Yeah,
Just a
so
question About, because I'm not too familiar with the departments in the town. Do we have like a GIS department?
we don't have a GIS department. We have the town GIS on the website is maintained by an outside
Oh,
contractor.
it is. Okay.
I think we have various departments that work with them.
Mhm.
Like the assessor's office basically feeds all the, the tax parcels and all the assessors information to that. The planning department has occasionally, I mean, I think the planning department works with it's the company's name is Mapageo, if I remember right. The
Oh, yeah.
planning department works with them to update the zoning map.
Mm.
Other than that, no, we don't have sort of a department here that does, at least not that I know of.
Because that would probably be something that the Trails Committee could really use, because we want to create like a big master map and
Mm.
so
Yeah,
maybe
so-
having somebody who knows GIS on there.
Yeah, and I think that we can probably, I have some other GIS related work I need to get done. And I've been meaning to, at some point, I'm going to get around to talking with Evan
Mhm.
and get a better sense of, I don't even know. Yeah, I haven't talked to Evan other than one brief conversation in passing, but yeah, there's probably some opportunities besides trails. But it would be helpful to have
Mm.
like a,
Wetlands, zoning, satellite.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of GIS information available and a lot of that comes from the state.
Mhm.
That they maintain.
Do you think most other towns have GIS?
I'm sure they at least have like one
Yeah.
person who's.
Right,
zoned and-
what I was getting to in a roundabout way was thinking that it would be good if we had at least one person on staff here who everybody knows is a point of contact for
yeah.
GIS.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I know the Land Trust has the Trail Forks on their website and
Yeah.
that's great. But somehow it's all gonna need to get like integrated.
Right.
Yes, I know that several years ago, the planning department had an intern for the summer. And Joe was going to have them, and I think he maybe had them go out with a GPS unit and do some trail mapping, but
Mm.
I think he was thinking at the time, as best as I can remember, that he was thinking in terms of building up a trails database, a trails maps townwide, but that didn't go very far, unfortunately.
Be good use of an interns.
The app Geo. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Everybody
put it
likes in there.
So there's, there's definitely something that we,
Are you with us?
I am. I'm with
I have other
you.
reasons, as I said, to follow up on that myself, so,
GIS.
all right. So if we're done with the Trails Committee for the moment,
Yes.
our next agenda item is the land use action items, which we've been sort of touching on a little bit with, thinking about mapping and stuff. We kind of spelled out, I think at our last meeting, we kind of looked over, and I really haven't had much time to think about it further since then either. But, sort of, some of what we were going to try to do. And that's something where we're going to depend very much upon rec for thinking about future needs, future land use needs for recreation. I think, Stephen, you had said that, that the rec commission is doing some planning along those lines, or is planning to
Right,
do
the
some planning.
what the recreation needs around, across Grafton,
Right,
from a recreation standpoint.
yeah,
And they
exactly.
will own, they'll not own, but they'll have control of the land and the property to make sure they can handle recreation activities.
Yep. That is something that we were supposed to have done as part of the open space and recreation plan. We were supposed to be identifying a lot of future needs. We never quite really did that in that plan. And the same thing for some of the open space and conservation needs, for which I would very much appreciate the Conservation Commission being in the position to evaluate particular conservation related, wild, habitat preservation, various requirements or needs for protecting conservation land for conservation purposes. So it's another reason why we would like to get someone from conservation back into this committee. That
So should we just reach out to, say, conservation, recreation, potentially planning to get, like right now, before our next meeting, to get their input as soon as they can give us some of their input? Like my vision is like, show me a map that we can see,
Yeah.
right? But I don't know how we can do that. But so that's one thing, like that's like my little thing. But additionally, to your point, is finding out, okay, what's recreation thinking down the line? What's conservation thinking down the line? Land trust, actually. But should we just reach out to those folks and try to get that information coming in?
I'll talk to Jen.
Yeah, you can reach out to Jen. I'll reach out to Sandra and see if we can't, hook up with conservation and get them more involved in this.
But what does that look like? So is it in our next meeting, we have these conversations versus just like, is it more of a one-off where you guys are coming back with that?
What is the end goal for collecting that information for this committee?
Yeah, I think what we would like to get is we would like to collect this, information related to open space and recreation, future needs for recreation, that would include like, where in town do we need to have more recreation facilities? What kind of recreation facilities do we need? And with respect to prioritizing potential land acquisitions, it's thinking in terms of, well, if there's some land that becomes available here, could we use it for recreation or conservation purposes? So, yeah, I think ultimately you might end up with sort of a map that at least, I mean, there's maybe a couple of dimensions to this, at least to the extent that I've thought about it so far. One is just sort of general areas, without regard for specific parcels of land that are or may be available. That, here are some areas, and that from a recreation point of view, it's probably like, what you guys are probably thinking of is, where do we need more recreation facilities and what kind? Or, I mean, there's probably several related conservation considerations, and I'm probably not the most knowledgeable on that, but like there's probably some areas where we have maybe some, we probably know, or the states has their, some endangered species or priority habitat maps. So we can kind of get some of that.
So I'm just trying to figure this out. So if everyone's operating independently or unilaterally, and you have all these particular groups, the conservation, rec, so how do you bring them into one fold under like a G2 summit type atmosphere?
Yeah.
Like,
So I-
and is maps is that the end goal, that we start layering all these? Like, I'm just trying to,
Well,
you know.
I was just thinking as you're talking, like, what if we say in January, like, say a January meeting or some, not next month, but another month, because you guys only meet once a month. Some of these boards and committees don't meet that often, right? So let's say, let's throw out for kicks January. We would like somebody from land trust,
That's
somebody
where
from
I'm going,
conservation,
exactly.
someone from recreation to come to our meeting. And to let them know that you're coming to our meeting with the intent of, give us some information. What do you see 20 years from now? Where do you see, like you said, where in town might be an area, or like you said, I guess, like that we need recreation? What is land trust kind of interested in, but they maybe don't think that they
Provide
can
like
do?
3 questions. Here's what we want
Yeah,
to talk about.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, future state, what needs, resources, committee, whatever that those,
Yeah,
and then just have them, that's what I'm saying, like, I feel like we're all working independently, but not collaboratively.
Yeah, and I think, ultimately one of, the role that we are to play, that this committee is to play, is to sort of
Corral.
gather that information
Right.
together. Yeah, and it's still, there's a part of it that we don't concern ourselves with on this committee, which is anything other than open space and rec. We're the open space and recreation plan implementation. So we want to bring together, and collate and compile and present information that's helpful for prioritizing land acquisition for recreation and open space purposes. Somebody else needs to be looking at land acquisition for other purposes, for.
but do you think that that would work? Like, does that make sense to just have those three, at least
Yeah,
those three
right.
players come in?
Yeah.
That's probably kind of a good next step, is to read, is to have, folks from these other groups
Let's
get
hear what they have
together,
to say,
get
yeah.
together with us. I mean, we've got recreation right here.
Yeah.
But just a
And-
matter of you going to them, during your next,
Yeah, your 3 questions.
Right.
your next meeting or two,
Yeah.
come up with that, right?
Yeah.
Coming back with the
Yeah.
answers to those
So-
3 questions.
And we
Whether,
should actually make sure that, is it Trevor?
Trevor.
Because agriculture, farms is
Yeah.
another part of this. I know they're desperate for farmland.
I was envisioning at a meeting like that, having, a screen up on the wall with the map, the open space map, something like you had sent out, because I did look at that in detail. And maybe in advance of the meeting, if those groups had time, they could shoot over. It could be 5 parcels, it could be 20, it could be more, but at least something to start with, and like have those parcels maybe highlighted, something to point to. And, get that list going.
yeah, I think this is probably going to be, it's not going to be a one-time thing.
Right.
It's going to take us a while, so probably some discussion back and forth and, looking at it, well, here's a picture. And, we like this, we like that, and, oh, I didn't think of that.
Mhm.
So it's probably kind of an iterative process as we continue to think things through, further identify some needs. And it might, it could even take some amount of time to just sort of think about, I kind of, to me, recreation seems like it's relatively well-defined.
Correct.
And you kind of know what recreation is.
We know what recreation is, we know what land is available.
Yeah.
What we have oversight over. So we know all of that.
Yeah.
And Nelson Park, that's a great example. Is it being used as effectively as it could be? And now rec is now playing a bigger role in the Nelson Park area.
Mhm.
So and then planning on moving the recreation office is moving out of this building to the library. we're talking about.
Mhm.
And Jen would like to build a basketball facility there.
Mhm.
I don't know how that's ever gonna happen, but
Right, right,
it's a wish for 20 years. That's one thing on the 20-year plan.
sure.
And your skateboard park,
Mhm, mhm.
that'd be a really nice place to put it.
Right,
Yeah. So part of what we're tasked with looking at is, potential future land acquisitions. That gets back to, I'm asking, I'm thinking about recreation. Where in town would we like to have recreation facilities where we don't currently have the land for it? And is there any land that might someday become available in that general vicinity? So that's part of what, I think it's at least part of what our task is going to be, is to look at future land acquisitions and what's the potential. And again, for recreation purposes, that's, you think about that from that point of view. For other open space purposes, I think there are probably several. Trails is another one that the Trails Committee gets involved in. To, if we bought this piece of land, would that be helpful to add to our trail system?
So just to bring in,
Conservation isn't going to be, is conservation in direct opposition to recreation?
no,
No.
no. In
Generally
fact,
not.
they probably wouldn't even potentially overlap, because generally if it's a conservation, there's some sort of a restriction
Right.
that
That
most
you-
likely,
Right.
yeah. So what,
It's conceivable, I suppose, that a particular piece of land might be really good, really be useful for recreation, but it also might have a lot of value
Right.
being preserved and
Right, that was the
retained as
point, yeah.
forest. So yeah, it's conceivable that I don't expect a lot of conflicts like that, but it's conceivable, and that's
It's, you ask the question first, is what's the best use of this piece of property?
Right.
yeah,
And then
right,
what are the
Group,
needs
and-
that this property could meet?
Yep.
Whether it's conservation or it's recreation or.
Yep.
be-
and doing that, ahead of potentially developers that are coming in, they're already looking at all of our parcels, right, to eat them up, so.
yeah. And when you think about conservation, you think about several things. One is habitat. One is wetlands, other forms of environmental protection. You can just think of forests as being valuable in and of themselves. I think there are potentially several conservation related values that hopefully the Conservation Commission is better equipped to articulate and sort of prioritize, I don't know, for lack of a better term.
So if we can just come back to the, so if we were to just present, let's say, 3 or so questions to these boards to ultimately come to us with, they can blab on about whatever they want, but so potentially, I just kind of wrote just some ideas like just parcels of interest to that particular entity, if they have any parcels that they're for some reason interested in, then potentially then areas in town with potential needs or wants. And that I was thinking more recreation, like you guys might be thinking like, oh, we're underserved over there. those-
Say that, how did you word that?
I just wrote like areas in town with potential needs. I don't know, can be
Okay.
anyway.
Mhm.
Thinking like, if a particular board might be saying, it most likely would be recreation that you're saying. Most of these other guys won't really care too much, I suppose, if South Grafton has way too much open space versus, but rec, you're thinking more in terms of,
Which population? are
yeah,
we able to get
meeting
into,
people's
so,
needs,
yeah.
right? Anything like, those are just. a
What about
couple
the, like, 5, vision, like forward,
Mm.
5-year, I mean, I think those are 2 very specific, like,
I know,
immediate parcels and what demographic or communities are we, what need are we serving?
Mhm.
But then futures, like, because there could be no land, I mean,
Mm.
what does 10 years from now look like?
What do, we have a townwide map of available pieces of property that have a, I'm gonna use one word caveat to in selling, that they have to be.
like 61, the chapter. lands.
Chapter land.
Would we start with that view? And see what is the best, what are the parcels of land
Mhm.
that would be of most interest or are closer to going on the market,
Yeah, yeah.
and then determine if that's something of value to us,
Mhm.
whether it's conservation or recreation.
And that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, based on, so say we come up with a few of these questions, then that will lead us down the route of, okay, now let's look at the map, right? And
Mhm.
say, oh, by the way, recreation and or someone else is interested in more space here.
And I think it's probably useful, you had mentioned a couple of moments ago about looking at areas of town and looking at specific parcels of land, and I think both ways of looking at it are probably going to be useful. By and large, the chapter land, for the most part, we don't know when it's going to come out of chapter
Right.
61. But we, nevertheless, we can say that, chapter 61 land in this area would be a good
Might be
opportunity
interesting,
for us.
Yeah, to us, right.
Not finding our map geosite.
So any other, like, if we were to come up with a couple of these, any more, not even questions, but like talking points or something for these committees, especially like you guys who are on them, that would lead you down the path that we're looking for, or the path of information we're looking for.
Yeah, so do you want to take these ideas we've just been talking about, and then at our next meeting, sort of nail down, this is not really a question, not what I would generally think of as a questionnaire, but sort of a simplified questionnaire. These, like,
Just conversation starters.
yes, right. Here are 3 topics or 3 questions, conversation starters to, and then reach out to the various.
Well, I feel like, I don't know if we should wait till our next meeting. I feel like if it's if we just say discussion points.
Yeah.
We're inviting you to a meeting in
I think we can do it right
January,
now, yeah.
and
Yeah.
we could do it right now and just say, if.
Does your board, or like, let's say, we could say, does your board or committee have parcels of interest currently in the
Right.
town? Does your board or committee have a specific areas in town, for example, North Grafton, South Grafton Center, that you may have potential needs or wants, I suppose? And then what's another? like,
And when on that
global
second
thing?
one, are you talking about like the consumer target, like, or just?
I don't know, like maybe Grafton Land Trust, they might, maybe not just recreation, maybe Grafton Land Trust is like, wow, we're really heavy over in South Grafton, maybe we could get some parcels, so it could be for all of
Oh,
them.
yeah, okay.
I like the thought, but I'm thinking more general, we can ask a lot of these specific questions.
Mm.
We may not get, everybody drives, everybody has a car.
Mhm.
So if there's a piece of property that would be ideal for a super park, for example, not a super park, but another park. People would drive to it.
Mhm.
They don't actually need to be in an area,
Right,
a specific area that's, we'll call underserved, because if it's underserved area that I can then walk to the park.
Mm.
Are there enough people in that area to walk to the park? Probably not.
Mhm.
Our town is pretty spread out. So it's going to be, this is land, what we put there.
Yeah.
Really, what is the need and where's the land?
Yeah.
And that's where at recreation, I'd look for you mentioned the 20-year plan. Although, what are the needs? And then what land do we have to fill those needs?
Yeah, and to that point, that's the fact that Grafton is basically a town where you've got to drive.
Yeah, it is.
That comes up in other contexts too, that I'm working with on, planning board and related stuff, that there's this, it's a reality in Grafton that pretty much every adult who lives in Grafton needs a car. There's very few places in Grafton where you can live and walk to whatever you need. There's no place in Grafton where you can live and take the subway or the bus and get around.
Mhm.
We have a commuter rail station in town, and that's good and useful if you happen to work in Boston.
Or if you want to go to Boston, you want to go to Worcester.
Yes.
That's
But
what the town's along the way.
for getting around generally to meet a lot of your needs, whether it's going to work, going to play, going to shop, going to get your hair done, whatever it is, you're driving. And that's just a function of the way Grafton is laid out.
Then it could be parking then. Parking could be. a
And so
consideration,
parking,
You know,
Park, yeah, exactly the same, the park in,
95 North Street,
Yeah.
parking is
parking was.
or
an issue.
Or the Williams Preserve, parking
Yeah.
there.
pretty much anywhere. some of our access to conservation land
Yes.
is, and
Right up
this
against
is,
the
this is something that we had to go through writing up the open space and recreation plan. We basically, among other things, we had to, it was sort of a quick and dirty ADA self-evaluation. For every piece of conservation and recreation land, we had to say something about how accessible it was, and part of that was availability of parking. And like just down the road from where I live, the Great Meadows, the access, the trail access there from George Hill Road. You might be able to park 2 cars along the side of the road, and that's it. And so it
But it could be as simple as, what are your biggest challenges or, barriers to, we could make it an open-ended question to just say like, if our role is to kind of bring the parties together and to provide some governance or.
and getting back to a point Stephen was making, that from a recreation perspective, there's not a lot that they're likely to feel they need to say about this particular area of Grafton needs something. Because that was sort of what got you started
Yeah,
there.
exactly, because I would just.
It is,
What if we did something like, if your department or group had $2 million, which
mhm.
parcels would you go and purchase? Like, right now?
Okay, here's my 4 questions. You ready?
Okay.
Does your committee board have any parcels of interest first? Second, I know I'm still saying this, but is there a demographic or area in town that is particularly valuable to your committee and or board? So kind of opening that up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Third, your goals or input related to potential land acquisition. So trying to ascertain, what are your,
They could say like, we're good with what we have, we want to develop it,
yeah,
or we need more.
yeah. So what is your board or
And what,
committee's
like, yeah.
goals / input related to potential land acquisition, future land acquisition, I suppose. And then the last, kind of what you guys were just talking about, any challenges that your board or committee is facing related to open space usage.
Yeah, and the question about areas of town, while I understand Stephen's point relative to recreation, it's not very location specific. From a conservation point of view, there probably are some location specific,
Right,
you know,
they'll be
Yeah.
different because they're
Right,
like
so,
really
right.
specific. with
So I
what
like
they're
the
doing.
questions, I think those are strong, and then who, we just need what bodies are we
So I
trying
was
to
thinking
get
like
into
the land trust, recreation, conservation, the ag committee, which I don't think is really functioning.
Right, last I heard, the
Only
Ag Committee,
person is
it's been a couple of
Trevor.
years since the Ag Commission was even able to
Well, we
meet.
appointed Trevor though onto it, but I
Yes.
think the rest of the committee is kaputs and he doesn't know how to get it started, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but-
maybe just him or his brother. Because I know that they have very specific wants and needs relative to farming land.
Yeah.
And those were the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 that I.
So those are
kinda
the
had.
committees. Are there any people that we would
Planning?
want?
The planning board wouldn't have a lot of input into that.
And that kind of goes along with.
What about the people who have the land?
The owners, the
Yeah.
landowners? Well, I mean,
then
yeah,
like that.
eventually, but maybe first we, get
Right.
this info from these folks, get them to the table, then get our map up and look at what's out there. And then that
Right.
61 chapter land, whatever it is, if all 3 committees say, oh, I'd love to something over there.
Right. I mean, we're looking to prioritize potential land acquisitions by the town.
Right. Ultimately, yeah.
So we're not asking the landowners what you think the best use of your land is going
Right,
to
no,
be.
right,
We're
right.
looking at it from the perspective of what would be valuable for the town to acquire
Right.
for open space recreation
Because right
purposes.
now, what is happening, and I mean, I don't know if other folks on the board, I hear from somebody almost every day related to growth. And why did we, this land, why did we do that with that land? And really, there's not a map, there's developers coming in, they're making an offer and, off they go. So there's a lot of pushback in our town that is saying, let's look at this more thoughtfully rather than just the developer has scooped it up and then that land is gone, you know, he paved paradise, so that's what this would be, right? It's a
Yeah,
little bit,
this-
at least
this-
there's a little bit of a guiding
The
principle,
landowner has that option to sell to a developer.
for sure.
So
So
that's
not
why
the-
I'm
the
saying
chapter land,
eventually the
The
land,
chapter land,
not the chapter,
yeah.
land, but,
yeah,
but
but even
Yeah.
still, even if there's a for sale sign on something.
who sold
Maybe the
the,
land-
who sold the Institute Road, that parcel?
I know there's,
God.
there's two entities, everyone is so sad
I'm
about that.
so
Makes
mad
me
about
want to
that.
cry.
It's gonna get worse, by the way, because there's
Oh,
industrial on the other side. Yeah.
It's horrible, like,
I know.
ever a trail person.
Well,
back
it's just the
there.
most beautiful road in our town,
It
probably.
was so
Yeah.
pretty and it's ruined.
But you know, that would be something that,
Wait,
listen,
who-
Kayleen was
who
no,
choked?
nobody. My daughter was the saddest. It's always been her favorite road, but. You know, if you don't, there was a for sale sign out there, or somebody owned it, and if I didn't buy it, so.
You know, when a private landowner
Yeah,
chooses to sell their
Yeah.
property,
if you wanna.
we have no
what-
control over that.
Control what's in there, we have to purchase it, yeah.
Now, the only, the,
But it abuts conservation, I mean, it abuts trails that are
Mhm.
maintained by the
North Grafton
Elementary.
borders that.
yeah, and in fact, one of the things the planning board did in the approval of that subdivision was insist that they
that's a your
build
fault.
a trail connection over to the North Grafton.
Let me tell
for
you,
what it's
I was
worth.
never so shocked in my life. when I was-
You know what it is? If they could have just, you know, the amount of trees on the road,
Yeah.
just on both sides, could have just been,
Now,
but it is what, I know that you guys worked with that a lot too, because I
Yeah.
remember looking at the
no,
meetings.
no. On that general topic, we are in the early stages of updating our comprehensive master plan.
Right,
And one of the things I hope we can get out of that is a better picture, a better but realistic picture of how Grafton can continue to develop. And in particular, I'm asking the question, and we're not there yet, but we're going to be doing a lot of public engagement, I hope. And ultimately, we're going to be asking everybody the question, how Grafton, and we can talk about how Grafton has developed over the last 20 or 30 years. And I'd like to ask the question, do you want to see development continue on that same path? Or would you like to see Grafton redirect the development? Except that we need to continue building housing.
Mhm.
That really should go without saying. It's a question of how do we want that to proceed? And one of the options that we will be able to contemplate, ultimately whether the town accepts it or not is another question, but one of the options that I think is worth considering is a method of an approach to subdivision development that basically compacts the houses into a smaller area and leaves more open space. So it's not, that approach ultimately, if we end up adopting that, preserving open space as part of your subdivision is not going to be an option. Right now, we have something called flexible development, but the developer gets to choose. And so an approach we could take is it's no longer optional. You're going to build houses closer together and you're going to leave a lot of open, half of your land or more is going to be left open.
The catch right now, I will say, Dave, is our master plan is not being followed. I've read the master plan most recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And granted, it's 20 years old, but still, it's a master plan. It's
Yeah.
what we should be, people like affordable housing, there's these committees that are not following it.
my objective for this master plan is going to be to come up with something that has a much better chance of being followed than the one we did 20
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't very good,
But there was
although,
governance over the master plan
Yeah.
being
Well,
followed.
that's,
this is, what I'm hoping that we'll end up with is an action plan that can be implemented that will actually accomplish some of the goals that we talk about. We're not there yet, and it's easier said than done, I know that. So I'm trying to, I have sort of idealistic expectations, and I'm hoping we can come somewhere close to having something that's really going to work in a way that ultimately we can all be reasonably comfortable with. You're not going to please everybody.
Right.
There are lots of us in town who would be just, we would be fine if nothing more ever got built in town. because we're pretty comfortable the way it is. But that's not realistic.
Okay, so back to, sorry, I have to be with my daughter tonight. Those, do you want to like work?
I like the
on
question. I
those
think
bars?
questions are good. And I think that the right audience is there, and then it's just a matter of contacting them and sending out the.
Do you want me to like email these out and then
Sure,
if you want to tweak them into the minutes or something?
sure.
And then can we just go ahead and send them to these people, like, so that we already get
I
that?
think we have to
step
have a
going?
date on the calendar.
right.
for our meeting, And then say, why wouldn't we bring everyone together?
Yep, given the holiday season.
Hmm,
If we send that out within the next week or so,
Say January or something.
third week of January, which would be our regular meeting schedule, that's probably reasonable to ask. And if that turns out to be problematic for some of them, well, surely one more month
Yeah.
should give them plenty of time. So either January, or February, yeah, suggest January as a time to meet with us. And
Okay, I'll clean it up a little and then I'll email them, then if you stick them in the minutes
Okay.
or whatever you do.
Yep,
You
sure.
do your magic and then send it to Dave. Okay.
Perfect.
And then last for me was just like, so that, to your point, Shannon, I thought it's a good idea, like, can we get some sort of a map on the board for them?
That's what.
Well,
yeah.
your maps were great, those.
I know,
Open space maps.
could even just put those up, yeah, to look at bigger, okay.
I suppose,
I can reach out to Trevor. Trevor, right? Just
Yeah.
tell him that we're doing this, that he might want to come to that as well. Well, hopefully they're busy. and plan.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much they, until I went and met with them a lot more than I wanted to in the summer, but they farm all over town, right? Like any parcel they can get,
It's like,
any parcel they can get their hands on.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. They can't get enough.
Yeah.
Of land, and and actually, I guess they approached the town, I believe he said, I think he said the town, or maybe it was Land Trust, I forget. To ask about farming on some other parcel, and they were turned down, but, yeah, it's a big thing for them, on anyone's land they'll take.
the main crop.
I guess it depends, I mean, I know when I did this tour on that Knowlton property, they had a lot of pumpkins and that sort of stuff up there, like winter squash and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. I mean,
yeah, I didn't get to see that part of it.
oh,
because I
it's
had to,
awesome, yeah.
I,
Oh,
I had time to go through the part with the cows and so on, but then
gotcha.
I had to leave for a meeting
Yeah.
before I could get to the other parts. I
So
didn't
that
see
whole,
what
where
did
they
there.
had that tent set up, kind of, there was a middle portion that was planted, so that wasn't the Knowltons, it was the Holdens. It's like they're snagging up any swath, but anyways, I'll reach
Yeah,
out to
they
him
do,
to make sure that.
right, Holdens do a lot of the farming on a lot of the farmland in town.
Mm,
They don't own it, but they do the farming on it.
right. Okay. Good. Sorry, yeah.
That's just.
All right, so we're making progress on the land use thing.
Yeah.
and that's good.
I'll email Colleen and I'll let you go. You guys know when I hear what meeting that will be on. I probably shouldn't present it, by the way.
No.
Last time I tried to present a new committee, didn't go so well.
You did.
Why?
My environmental sustainability.
Yeah,
Committee.
Hmm.
Well, we're gonna bring it back.
good.
No, but I figured just maybe one of you guys. Yep. To present to the select board.
In January?
You guys can think about it. I'll let you know what the date is.
Yeah,
and she knows.
whenever they
Tuesday.
can fit it on the agenda.
Okay. What's
So-
next?
We're good with that?
Yep.
And the last agenda item we have is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Yes, I
Yes.
move that we approve the minutes of
Second,
September, October's meeting.
second that approval.
Moving and second. Is there any discussion, any additions or corrections?
Good.
Good, thank you, Sharon.
Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Declare the motion carry unanimously. And I think a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.